Alrighty, hello again, everyone, and welcome to it, the Daily Caller Podcast, the Friday video edition. I am Derek Hunter. I am your host, your Mr. Rourke for this episode. And as we do every Friday, we bring somebody into our world to get to know their world, and this week is no different. Ladies and gentlemen, join me, please help me, Dr. Freud. Join me in welcoming Brian Kilmeade, co-host of Fox and Friends, host of the Brian Kilmeade Show on your radio dial. And as I say, you are the Tommy Brookins of Fox News. Do you know who Tommy Brookins is? Tom Brookins.
Sadly, I don't.
He was a third baseman for the Detroit Tigers when I was a kid, but he was their utility guy. He literally played every position.
Right.
Wherever they needed him, they put him. He was always good at whatever he did. But you're filling in. I see you. You're on the 5. You're filling in for Tucker. Do they let you go home at Fox?
Oh yeah. I mean, to me, it's when they call your name, it's a privilege. So I get hired to do Fox and Friends and do the radio show, and they say, "Hey, we need you on the 5." I think that's a compliment. When they say, "Hey, Tucker's going to be out these days, can you fill in?" I think that's fantastic. He's got a great show. It's different than anything else.
Yes.
I don't try to be him. I don't have a monologue. He's got better hair, clearly. But
I don't know about that.
Yeah, and the thing is, I always look at Fox as a big gym. I mean, it's like a gym. Hey, do you want to play baseball today? You want to play basketball today? You want to play soccer? What if you play all of them at once? Yeah, why wouldn't I? You know, technically I'm at work, but if you actually really want to, upon further review, I'm really not working. Like for you, this is fun, right?
It is. It is fun. The 4 days a week that I do just the audio version of this, it's me and cats.
Right.
That's a little bit more fun because I don't have to leave the house.
And they make me sneeze.
I've been on your radio show. I've seen you in action. Fox and Friends ends at 9. Your radio show is on air at 9:06, 9:07.
9:06, yeah.
You sit there waiting for an elevator, and you go till noon. You go from 6 till noon.
Yeah.
And then you sit around and do the 5, and then you'll do Tucker.
When needed.
Yeah. But you revel in that.
It's really fun. I would be the annoying deli guy. If I had a deli guy, I'd be talking about this thing. I'd be the guy who was an accountant that at lunch would be talking about what's happening in the news or what's happening with history. Because especially now, can you imagine not having this microphone with Donald Trump in office?
Oh, I know. But you originally started, how'd you get into broadcasting? You were more of a sports guy, a sports background.
Right out of college. My first big job paid me at least $12,500 a year.
5 digits.
Yeah, I got into that sports phone. So it predated all sports radio.
You call up and get updates. That was you.
Okay, you can make it seem as not as significant
for
as
like
I think.
$1.95 a minute.
A little less. 976-1313. I would do a sports update like many others every 7 minutes, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. And I could not believe how lucky I was. Even looking back, when someone hires you to be a sportscaster, then if you want to make some extra money, go cover the Yankees, Mets, Knicks, or Rangers, or Islanders, or which was a lot easier, or a major boxing event. And I tell you, walking in with that mic flag wasn't the most prestigious thing in the world, but just having a reason to do this for a living, that's when I realized I loved it.
Now, what year was this? About?
When I graduated, I went right from school to continuing to waiter at Bennigan's, and then was able
I
to
love their Monte Cristo.
Right, deep fry everything.
Yes,
great for your skin.
Right.
By the way, upon further review, the Stridex pads were part investors into the Monte Cristo. But 87 probably. 88.
So this is before the internet. You're updating this every 7 minutes. How are you getting your information?
Well, it's really, and that's what's great about what you do. And what I was able to do then is you have box scores. So you don't have time to write off. It's bottom of the 7th. The Yankees up on the Twins 2-1 RBI single.
But where were you to get this information, or were you just keeping? Was it New York centric?
Oh, we had a scoreboard. We were a subscriber to a scoreboard system, and we would have some TVs and a radio, and we would have a guy there who called a writer. His writer would be like, "Okay, Derek Jeter had an RBI single here," or a home run by Reggie Jackson, or something like that. Home run, 2-run homer. 14th on the year. So we learned to have a shorthand to writing, but we also learned to do this without a script while looking at a clock to make sure you get out at 57 seconds in Chicago, 59 in Detroit, and 58 in New York.
I have 2 daughters. One's 18 months, one's 2 months.
Right.
They're never going to understand what this is.
I know.
The concept of this. You were basically the personification of a Google search.
Yes.
If you want to find out what's going on, you call Brian, and he updates you every 7 minutes.
Especially bettors. I mean, if you're betting, you don't want to wait for the 11 o'clock news to watch. I don't know if you know Warner Wolf.
I know the name.
He was the local sportscaster, made his name in Washington, and then went over to New York, and then went back and forth for a while. You would wait and find out how the Mets and Yankees did at 11 o'clock at night if you missed the game. Then regionals were cropping up, providing more opportunity, the regional sports networks. But once you're in the game and people say, "Well, do you have a job?" and you can write on your taxes broadcaster. To me, that was
you were a broadcaster recording. That's what you classified it as.
Putting me down.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I've had over 72 jobs, and if I wanted to pad my resume, it would be a book. But I don't know that I would never. I'll let it slide. Okay, so how do you go from that brand of broadcasting over the phone to a recorder to actually broadcast?
Started my own show, and I did. It was called Health Digest. I didn't think I could book big name athletes, so I got sponsored. I got a clothing deal. I got a makeup deal. We had a makeup artist.
Was it a public access show, or
it was local origination? And then we got sponsors, underwriters. We bought a set. Then we got a limo deal. We got a catering deal. So we took this thing, and by the time I was done after 2 years, we had some of the biggest names in sports, and I had a tape. So all the money I put back into the show. So I was able to do sports phone, waiter, get that going. Then I kind of segued and started, well, instead of waiting for a job, wouldn't it be great to do stand-up? So I ended up taking a class, and in 6 weeks I had 15 minutes of material, which I really meant I had 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And then you went to work for 10 years doing that. Went out to Los Angeles, did all sports radio out there. Got a local job at an Ontario station, I was in Malibu, living in Malibu, and then going to Ontario. And
Canada.
Nope, right in the Inland Empire in California. So it's similar to living in Manhattan and going out to the Hamptons. So my Celica, I really pushed my Celica to the limit.
So you were lazy and you were an overnight success,
right? And I had a lot of money. Yeah, and I was gambling and living the high life.
So when did Fox come along? Because this sounds like a lot of everybody has these stories. Everybody successful has these stories. I imagine how many people stop at year 7 and go, all right, I'm going to go work construction, or I'm going to go get a job in an office. What differentiated you? Why didn't you become that guy at year 8 where you're just like, I don't want to drive this 92 Celica anymore. I'm going to do something else. What do you think it was in you?
For the record, it's a 1986 Celica.
Okay.
And it really
trying to make it a little classier.
With a hatchback, bright red. To me, I was always on a path. I was like, I'm going to just keep working in. If I have to weave, if I have to bob and weave, I'll do it. I was going to push sports, push news, and push stand-up, and find out what broke through first. I knew I couldn't act, couldn't sing, didn't want to dance, had no interest in it.
Not with that attitude.
Right. And with my hamstrings, very tight in terms of dancing, and I wouldn't look good in a skin-tight outfit. And I've tried; it doesn't work. So I just wanted to push all directions, and then I got a job on Long Island being a sportscaster for $35,000 a year. But I came back; it was
That's
the
big
worst.
Money.
Yeah, well,
12 years, you've doubled your money.
That's again. Now you're being more positive. First, you tell me I'm not a broadcaster, and now you're saying I doubled my money. But the best thing about being hired in your own hometown. So I came back from Los Angeles to take this job to do solid sports and maybe do some game coverage on the side. But the worst thing about coming back is being on the worst news you've ever seen on television in your hometown. But what's even worse than that is getting fired from that job. So I get fired in front of everybody I know. So they knew I announced I was in a local newspaper. I got hired, and then everybody knew I got fired. It's hard to spin that. Yeah, but along the way, I also did UFC, and I wanted some of the people.
You were a fighter?
No, I did more important, harder. I was a broadcaster there, legitimate. And they told me, whatever you do, this is great, and you're good at it, but whatever you do, don't put it on your resume because it'll never be accepted as mainstream sports. Boy, were they wrong.
No kidding.
So I did the first 5 of them.
So then you get to the big time. You get to Fox News.
Not yet. New Sport in between, which was a launch of an all-sports television network, which was from NBC and Cablevision, put their minds together.
Is that regional?
Yeah. So the goal was to be national. So it launched in 20 million homes, and I was hosting and being a reporter there. You learn how to go out, for example, if I'm covering the Wizards here. If I go cover the game, I got the game coverage, then you do a feature on the coach, then you do a feature on a player. And you come back with 3 packages. You go write them, and that was really how you learn to write. Be quick on the edit. You do it all yourself. You'll even learn competency shooting, like a lot of people is listening. But then I got this lead in that MSNBC and Fox were launching, and everyone says neither one. There's no market for it because no one's watching CNN. They got a point too. Right. So I came back, and Fox Sports Net was launching. And someone said to me, they're looking for a sportscaster on Fox Sports Net. And someone said, just, you know what? Don't go there. Fox News is looking for a sports guy. So I sent my tape in, and I get this call while I'm walking in the city one day. They go, can you come in tomorrow? We know who you are. We'd like you to come in. And I think this is a joke. So I come in the next day. They tour around, and they said, you want to go read? I said, okay. And I went and did it. And they go, can you come in tomorrow and be on the air? I go, I kind of have a job. They go, Newsport. He goes, well, no one watches that anyway. So I said, okay, great. So I actually hopped on the air at Fox when they weren't even seen in New York, when no one knew what it was. And I was on both networks at the same time. But Fox paid me more in one shift than they would pay me in 2 weeks at the other place. And then I realized how great it was. It was like walking into Yankee Stadium when they were the Highlanders. I go, this place is going to be huge. The work ethic, the attitude, we're going to take on the world attitude.
Well, there were no rules, I imagine, back then. So it was basically whatever you carved out for yourself, whatever you did, there's nobody breathing down your neck.
And they were positive, too. And, for example, I remember a couple of times you tried to be perfect, and I wasn't. And they called me in. They said, don't relax. I like your first 2 sportscasts. Don't worry about your third. Well, look, they always tried to spin things positive. And I go, this is so unique. They also did this crazy thing, is every negative headline they would frame and put up. So USA Today called us a joke, and Daily News thought it was a lark, and all these hints. And as they would come out, someone would walk away, pick up the headlines, would be framed on the wall the next day. And Roger Ailes would come down and just be like half Vince Lombardi, half Mike Ditka, and say, don't worry about them. We're going to beat them one by one. We're going to knock them off. The bigger the event, the bigger we'll become. People will see we're there to be counted on. We're fair and balanced. And then when we got bigger and we mattered more, everything started leaking to the press, and we became so self-absorbed, everyone's criticizing everyone. He just stopped the meetings. But that attitude for the first 5 years set the groundwork for the next 15.
You were the sports guy for a while. How do you make the transition to everything, really?
Well, I like to think I started to show that I could do everything, and I had that background. I always talked about it. And go back to Sports Phone for a second. The Persian Gulf War started, and I volunteered to do War Phone. So I would do updates.
There was a war phone?
I made it up.
Every 7 minutes?
Yeah, every 7 minutes, I would update on how many sorties were flown, what statements were read. And
were people calling this?
They were calling it, and not only that, they got an immediate sponsor. So I always had a passion for the news. I thought sports was my quickest way on.
But, okay, so then Fox, first of all, what year was your first book published?
2003, I think.
Sports, first 2 books
Yeah,
were
the games
sports
do
books?
count. And then the next one, it's how you play the game. Because I always thought what you learned in sports, me as a player, I played soccer through college, what you learn in sports really outlines in many ways who you become in life. And I only interviewed people that weren't professional athletes. I picked 72 people from John Kerry to George Bush to his dad to Ronald Reagan. I interviewed a biographer for Reagan. And I would just say, what do they learn in sports that paid off later in life? And almost all of them had stories in which they fell short. But it almost blows your perfect game and it lets you loose to go and explore the second thing that you wanted to do in life. And that book, To Judith Regan's Shock, was a bestseller for 7 weeks because she paid me so little. But at the act.
That's the publishing world.
Yeah. So I interviewed 72 people, taped it, knocked it down to an essay, kept all the tapes. The next book, I interviewed. Actually, Gerald Ford was in that book. Sadly, since I did the book, Robin Williams was in it, and he died. General John McCain was in it, he died. Bush 41 was in it, and he died.
Crap, I shouldn't be talking to you.
Don't, please don't. But we were able to roll those tapes, and the other day we played the whole George Bush interview, Bush 41, because he talked about playing Yale baseball. And I don't think many people saw that perspective.
Yeah, no, I love his baseball card that Topps put out in 1991. It's
Didn't
worth
see
a
it.
fortune.
Is it?
It's like over $1 million because they only made 100 of them for White House staff.
Wow.
But it's great. So then, was history always, because your latest book, Andrew Jackson and the Miracle of New Orleans, it's your second history book.
Third.
The other one was Thomas Jefferson and the Tripoli Pirates.
And the first was George Washington's Secret
Oh,
Service.
yeah, that's right. Where does history come from out of this guy with a sports background with a love for news?
Well, put it this way. For a lot of people, when they want to get away, they golf, they play tennis, they go on vacation. For me, if I want to escape from doing the news every day, I'll read history. And when I started reading Dave McCullough's books and John Meacham's books, and they didn't talk about history like here's what happened. They talked about, Thomas Jefferson had red hair and was 6'1". And he humanized John Adams in a way I never thought possible. They weren't these guys on a mountain. They were these guys living, breathing with failings
and problems.
And the way they used to argue and fight. And I go, wow. I couldn't get enough of it. And then when Bill O'Reilly started writing these other books, which I thought were fascinating,
the Killing series.
The Killing series. But when you write, Killing Abraham Lincoln and George Patton, I love it. But I said to myself, they'll buy it because he's Bill O'Reilly. Mm-hmm. When I read it and saw it came to life and saw how accurate it was, I said, Bill, I got this one idea. I've been looking at it for 20 years. One day, I was on 25A, a famous road on Long Island and North Shore, and I saw these guys painting a line on the side of the road. And I said, sir, I thought a machine did that. And he said, it does. I'm with the Historical Society of Manhasset, and we are commemorating where George Washington came to thank his spies. So I went to Long Island University, grew up in Long Island.
First you heard of it?
No idea.
First you heard of it there where they're drawing
That was
the lines?
1989. So I hear you go, if you really care, it's Morton Pennypacker. It's in the library. Go take it out. I got to that book, but I got a young adult book first. That book was out. There's only 2. It was written as a legal document, so I probably would have got bored and closed it. Mm-hmm. But that young adult book that was 100 pages told the story that I had to go, is this fiction or nonfiction?
Right.
The way they had dead drops, invisible ink, writing between the lines, 4.5 years, never know the identity, lived and died without Washington knowing almost all of them. They said that they told Washington they will do this for him, but never tell anybody our identities. And he did. He kept their secret, but he also kept their letters, allowing Morton Pennypacker to put the puzzle together in 1930, who these people were. A farmer, a grocery store owner, a bartender, a longshoreman, a printer who they thought was a loyalist. He was actually just the opposite. A printer was a journalist back then, and a socialite. They combined forces in a way that even the CIA Historical Center, and there is one, said that we teach our guys and our women all about the Culper spy ring before they go out on a single mission. So when they told me that, I said, I'm going to do it. If it sells 4 copies, fine. I just think it'll be a great movie.
Well, you get very excited. You can see his passion in this, and you bring that to each of your successive books as well. Are you more of a history buff now than you were when you started, would you say?
No question, because I also do this series now on Fox Nation called What Made America Great. So they sent me to Monticello behind the scenes, including the slave quarters. They sent me to the Hermitage behind the glass and saw the gifts that Washington gave Jackson. They sent me to Mount Rushmore, and I went behind the mountain to the Hall of Records. I had a chance to go to the vice presidential residence and go through, went underneath the Lincoln Memorial. So as you see,
I saw a video of that. What is under there? I saw just a short clip.
They're beginning to reclaim it. I mean, you see the workers there, and they were drawing sketches as they were working on the Lincoln Memorial, and you see what was a life underneath there, and they're beginning to they're going to make this within probably 5 years part of the tour.
Yeah, 'cause it's a huge building, and it almost seems unfinished. Like they said,
totally. And we had to go with Ryan Zinke because he's the Interior Secretary, and he's the one who brought us through. I mean, he's the one literally, he sat there with the keys, and we just go down, and we're walking in sand. So it's pretty amazing to look up and see this, and they're beginning to, and they've outlined certain areas and put glass over it. That's when the workers, bored like any other workers, would do basic graffiti. But they would draw cartoons and their names and everything.
All of this from a 976 number, ladies and
1313.
1313.
25 cents. And it is a broadcasting job.
And now let's get to Andrew Jackson and the Miracle of New Orleans. I want to ask you sort of a process question about this book, because the Battle of New Orleans is kind of famous. It's what made Andrew Jackson famous. It helped propel him to the presidency eventually. When I look at things that we know about history, there are scores, hundreds of books about JFK. And each one of them, I don't know where they get this information from. You think, well, we got it all. We figured it out. How can you write another book about JFK? Where do you start when you decide you want to write about Andrew Jackson? And I imagine part of you probably says, well, this had to have been covered before.
Yeah, absolutely. I try to bring something different to each one. And the first thing you do is you talk to editors. I lucked out with Sentinel Books, a division of Penguin, which got bought by Random House. So I just hit it off with this incredible editor, Bria Sanford, and this guy, Adrian Zackheim. If anyone's ever doing a book and wants someone, a teammate, not a publisher, that's what I got. So we worked on it after George Washington's Secret Six that they showed interest in, and they shouldn't have. Listen, I have no track record. I'm a sports guy that became a news guy that has a degree.
What's a hell of a story, though, that you brought to them.
And there were other people that wrote it.
It wasn't covered ground before.
Yeah, but they were just like, we're in. I said, you're in, really? And they got into a mini bidding war for it, and I said, such a responsibility. And now it's sold over 1 million copies. and then Tripoli Pirates is right behind it. Jackson is about 5% off, but it could, the paperback's been beating the hardback. And what they did is we tried to bring something new, and I approach it like a news story. And I got help from people who are selflessly trying to keep the story alive. In this case, it's this guy, Ron Drez, a big 6'2", 75-year-old former decorated Marine who's a historian, who said 8 years ago we found documentation that showed the British planned on taking New Orleans and holding it. We found the words written to General Packenham, who was killed in the battle, that when you win New Orleans, you will hear talk of a treaty. Ignore it and hold it. They want to, General Packenham, make New Orleans British. The Americans had no right, Napoleon had no right to sell it to America. They wanted to abrogate the treaty of, they wanted to abrogate the Louisiana Purchase, let alone the Treaty of Ghent.
So the war is technically over when the Battle of New Orleans
They
happens.
had no idea.
They had no idea, but they also seem to have no concern. The British.
No concern.
Take the city anyway, and we'll hold it.
Where are we sitting, Derek? What happened here? They were out. We had actually more militia members than they had soldiers, British soldiers. And this thing fell like a stack of cards. The militia just dispersed. They went and burned the city to the ground.
Yeah.
They were terrorizing the Atlantic seaboard. They were just going to go right through. The Battle of Baltimore stunted them. Then they go around to finish us off in New Orleans. They thought they were just going to win easily. They never met someone like Andrew Jackson.
Andrew Jackson, outnumbered, outgunned.
Virtually 2-1.
And this is an epic battle that was, an hour and a half?
45 minutes.
45 minutes. Tell us about the Battle of New Orleans.
So what happens is the best thing that Jackson does is go into business with smugglers, hoodlums, pirates. It's Jean Lafitte. Totally true story. He hates the British as much as Jackson hates the British. Why does Jackson hate the British? Well, his brother died in the Revolutionary War. His other brother got captured along with him, died basically as coming back from prison. His mom, when it was just him and his mom, his dad died before he was born. His mom has to go earn a living. She gets a disease. She dies. At 14, America has their freedom, and he has no family. He's raised by his town, his county, his country. He bleeds red, white, and blue, and he just cannot wait for the day we can pay back the British. And this is his moment. A 41-year-old self-taught militia general becomes a full general, puts together 1,200 fighting force, reels off a series of victories, the last one in Pensacola, and then says they're going for New Orleans. He sprints over there with 1,200 men. He addresses a city that might be more loyal to the French than to him, but he tells them, we're the guys in charge now. I hope you support us, but if not, we're taking the city anyway. If we lose the city, we'll burn it down before we give it up. And every male is drafted. They reported, we gave them arms. They begin to drill. They begin to parade. They begin to lift morale. So the question is, where will they land? Hence come the pirates. The pirates were approached by the British, say, we know all about you, Jean Lafitte. We know about your crimes. We are going to expunge those crimes, make you a British officer if you come with us. He said, can I get back to you? He goes back. He has no intention of doing this. So he goes up to the governor of New Orleans because I know you think I'm a hoodlum, but basically I got guns, I have gunpowder, I got people. Where's Jackson? He goes, Jackson's not going to deal with you. He goes, he will if I tell him this. So he introduced Jean Lafitte, Mr. Jackson, nice to meet you, General. I'd like to help you out. He goes, I don't know, you're a criminal. He goes, really? I have guns, I got flint, I got people. He goes, shake this hand.
Suddenly, hey, wait a second.
And he figured out where they were going to land, where the bayou would be accessible. The British picked the exact wrong spot. They come aboard, they're partying, bright red outfits. The minute the sun sets, Jackson says they will not have one restful night on our soil. He attacks them with guns and hatchets. They say, according to some of the British officers, it was the most brutal fighting that he ever experienced. And most came off the battlefield with Napoleon a short time ago. They get up, the sun comes up, they look up and they go, wait a second, New Orleans is over there. And I don't know if people are watching or listening, but Jackson sets up right here. They got to get past him. So he says, okay, everybody report with a shovel. He digs a moat. He builds a wall. They fill up the moat and they empty the canal, the Rodriguez Canal. They repopulate it with water, for lack of a better term. And they now have a fort. So the longer they wait to reinforce, the higher he builds the wall, the deeper he builds the moat, the more he drills his guys. By the time Packenham gets into town, because Ross was killed in the Battle of Baltimore, he was supposed to be in charge, Packenham, Wellington's brother-in-law, and they use Wellington, the legendary military leader, he goes, I don't promise myself much success there. I'm not going, but you can take my guys. So Packenham, the brother-in-law, shows up and says, what the hell did you do? We can't win. we're supposed to go straight ahead. They go, hey, if you don't have the guts to fight, you can leave. So Buckingham goes, all right, I'll figure it out. He doesn't. When they finally go to fight, the first thing we do is we kill all their officers, and Pakenham gets killed within 15 minutes. We wipe out 2 generals, 7 colonels, and something like 75 overall officers. By 45 minutes, by the time they try to surrender, Jackson keeps sending this guy Lambert back. He's like, send me your senior officer because you killed them all. So when he finally surrenders, the British, we basically lose 30. We have 39. We have 13 dead, 39 wounded. They have 1,200 dead, countless wounded. They've never been destroyed like this. So Jackson pulls off such a feat. It is celebrated as the second biggest holiday in America after the 4th of July. When he is done, he is the most famous man in the country, maybe even more famous than Madison. He would ride that popularity, finish off and take Florida in 1818. He'd ride that popularity to 3 runs at the White House, winning the popular vote all 3 times and winning the presidency twice.
The book, Andrew Jackson and the Miracle of New Orleans, which one? I assume this is your favorite book, just listening to you talk about it.
Well, without Washington, there's no Jackson. I just feel such a part of it. I joined the Hermitage as a trustee, so I'm like all over this. And then he now got all his land back. They just doubled the Hermitage, so they're reconstructing the whole plantation.
Why does he's had a renaissance in recent years? The Democrats have gone away from him, and they used to have the annual Jefferson-Jackson Day dinners. Then, as they were enforcing political correctness on everybody else, somebody said, hey, every year, every state celebrates 2 slave owners. So they've gotten rid of that. But he has gotten a renaissance, particularly with Donald Trump. Why do you think that President Trump has such admiration for Andrew Jackson?
Well, I mean, Steve Bannon told him the truth about him. There is a lot of similarities. Number one, he's never thought acceptable to those in Washington. Back then it was Virginia. He was looked at as an outsider, a backwoodsman, not worthy of the mantle. Hated by his predecessor. John Quincy Adams hated him, thought he wasn't worthy. Okay. That was my alarm to make sure I come here.
Yeah, you're here on time.
Good.
Very
so
good.
John Quincy Adams despised him, thought he wasn't worthy for the office. So bad he wasn't even there at the White House when the transition took place. Number 3, when Jackson was despised by those intelligentsia, he took his case to the people. He was the first to campaign. Does that remind you of anybody?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Carter.
Right, yeah,
No?
absolutely. Thanks for playing along, Derek. So there's a lot of similarities. And when it was time to go to the White House, nobody wanted to work for Jackson. So he had to do this thing called bring his family. Even though his wife died during the campaign,
right.
He had his whole family, his nieces and nephews. And they said, what are you doing? He said, I need people I can trust. Nobody in Washington I can trust.
Andrew Jackson had a famously short temper, particularly in regards to his family and comments about his wife. Did he not engage in a couple of duels in his life?
He killed a man, and before he actually took over this militia and they started finally getting involved in 1812, he had a duel. He was a second and took a bullet in the shoulder. He actually couldn't fight.
Explain what a second is.
You're the backup for no reason. Yeah.
My honor has been offended, but if I sleep in, will you try to take a shot for
fight.
this guy?
Next thing you know, he's fighting. And
if I sleep through my alarm, would you take a bullet for me?
Right. I would never sleep through my alarm. That's pretty clear because I keep it on my phone. But so he takes a bullet in the shoulder. So he is down to 140 pounds. He is hurting just to get on a horse. It's hard for him to get on a horse with one hand. He's got to lead his men while hoping not to die. So through this whole thing, through the same year, he's trying to recover from a duel. So it was illegal back then, but if you don't stand up for yourself, everyone would know it,
right.
And you have no choice. So, basically his mom had a philosophy, don't ever sue for libel, settle scores yourself.
Now,
and he kept up that.
In the Battle of New Orleans, we obviously killed a lot of British officers, as you said. Was he a sit back and issue orders guy, or was he down there covered in blood with a hatchet?
He was in fighting. In that particular battle, he did not go and he stayed on the outside, but he was right in the front, just like Washington. He always felt he would never be killed in battle, but he was also behind the lines, literally urging his men, making sure no one turned and ran. He would say, I will shoot you if you try to do this.
It's a hell of a motivation.
Yeah. And he would say that along the way, but he was known as the people's general.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. They had a first foray to go to New Orleans, and they got pulled back by then Secretary of War Armstrong, who would be succeeded by Monroe, a guy, they both liked each other. Monroe and Jackson got along. And for the most part, Madison, I understand, and Jackson too, but Madison and Jefferson were kind of like, not as bright as us, not as well schooled as us, didn't write the Constitution like us. I don't really like the way he doesn't really digest things like we do, and a deep thinker like us. But when they got pulled back, by the time these guys get pulled back, they had to go all the way back to Tennessee. They all were sick and the guys were hurting. He told all his officers, get off your horses, put the sick guys on. So he would be, here's General Jackson walking through the mud while other officers below his rank were on his horse.
With
and they
clean
all did
uniforms.
Yeah.
And the men saw that.
The men saw, just like a coach that was a great player, I think the men saw that he would do anything for them. And that's why he would take their so-called motivation.
Lastly, what is your impression of Andrew Jackson as a president? General,
I would say this.
but there are controversies surrounding his presidency.
The Trail of Tears took place technically afterwards.
But he basically said once he lost the case before the Supreme Court, he said, well, let the Supreme Court send their army to enforce it, and said, I don't care, I'm still marching these people out of there.
Right. Van Buren actually executed the deal. To me, Derek, it reminds me of the Bay of Pigs. Eisenhower had the plan. JFK executed it poorly. It wasn't his plan, but he took credit. He fell on the sword for it. They say Martin Van Buren misinterpreted how to do it. Bottom line is, I say this. I cannot do a dissertation on his presidency, but being that I've been on the road with the hardback and this back for 2 years, what I did in the afterward is I removed me, you, and Donald Trump. And I said, what did Reagan think? What did Truman think? What did FDR think? What did Teddy Roosevelt think? What did Lincoln think? And all for different reasons they looked up to him. And they all took something from his presidency at different times. The guy that was the most fanatical was Truman. He put up a statue of Jackson at his own library and actually went down and took a measurement because he was in he was in men's clothing for a while and made sure the statue was the exact right size.
You can say haberdasher.
Send
people to Google. Yeah. It's not used enough, but I love the sound of that word.
There's a reason. It confuses people.
I know.
You do like
the first time I heard it, I was like, what does that mean? Like a bon vivant? What's going on?
The Haberdash warehouse. Doesn't really fall off the tongue as opposed to the men's warehouse.
Although, I think we got a business idea for somebody out there who wants it. I got to ask you a couple of non-book related questions really quickly, because you were recently harassed on the street in New York City by a liberal activist, Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson had his home protested outside. We've reached a weird sort of nexus, this weird crescendo. I hope it's a crescendo. I hope we're not going any higher. First of all, what was going through your mind as these people were following you? Were they saying something to you?
Oh, no, there was nonstop.
How long were they with you?
They were just saying things. There was two of them popped out, and they have a website. And my main focus was don't give them any content because they'll never leave. Mm-hmm. Don't show them a temper. Don't show them they're going to get to me. And
they were with you for a while, though.
They were with me for at least half hour. So they caught me on, if you know New York City, on 57th and 7th. Mm. And I just do what I normally do. I went to 57th and 7th into the subway. They went through. Took the subway to Penn Station and went through. Then went up the stairs. They went through. Then I had 10 minutes still to wait for my train. Now, if I missed that train, I would have missed my daughter's game because the next train is 3:45. The game starts at 4:30. So I'm just going to stay and wait. I bought a smoothie, did everything, and they kept rolling it. I'm heartened by this. Within 24 hours, they posted it. Within those less than 24 hours, they took it down. They got so much blowback. They didn't put both their Twitter's account private. So I didn't say anything publicly. I called my media relations. I said, I have a sense they're going to post this. I didn't really say anything. Mm-hmm. Go, you didn't say anything. I didn't. Now, if in a different era, if it was one guy and I felt threatened, that would be one thing. But they were trying to incite violence. This guy's from Fox News. They love Donald Trump at Fox News. This is Donald Trump's favorite show. All that stuff, trying to incite some type of violence. Or I don't even know what they were doing.
Right.
So things are what they are. So I don't know if I made the right decision, but I know this.
No, you did.
I don't have to define what I did or why I lost my temper when I did.
Right. You're not lawyers aren't involved. You're not writing a check to settle with anybody. But that incident, along with what happened with Tucker, along with what has happened to a lot of administration officials, is something new in American politics. It was, punch the clock, and then you're a normal person, and everybody respects that. We agree to disagree, that sort of thing. Now we've got this harassment. I just want to get your sense of somebody who's been through this. Where do you think this ends? Because I don't know how it ends well.
Well, don't forget Steve Scalise.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a Bernie Sanders worker's getting shot.
Yes.
So other people are getting interrupted. Well, I say this. The only thing I could hope is, do you think those people look good harassing Ted Cruz?
No, I don't.
No, I know you do. Derek, even if those people were harassing Bernie Sanders, I know you're the antithesis of Bernie Sanders. I would be just as outraged if they did it to Bernie Sanders as Kirsten Nielsen.
No, it is.
And that's just it. And people, I just think rational people don't want to see that either side. I think it makes their side look bad.
But it doesn't happen to Mika and Joe, for example.
No.
I was in New York when my book came out, and I was walking by Fox and MSNBC, and NBC's not that far. It's a couple blocks away, and there goes Mika in the other direction. I didn't feel compelled to just start filming her and start yelling at her and getting in her face.
did?
Or go to. No, I didn't. I wanted somebody else to.
Yeah.
But but there really isn't an equivalent. There's this compulsion on the left to keep the mob angry, to get the mob riled up, and sick them on people, and consequences be damned. There is no, for example, with Mika last week, talking about, since this is filming we're going to air next week, with the butt boy comment. If you said that, or Steve Ducey said that, or Ainsley, or anybody at Fox News had said that off the cuff in a fit of stupidity, as everybody has, Morning Joe would have done several segments about cheering how your advertisers, thanks to the Media Matters mob, are leaving the show and they want you fired. They might not say fire this person, but they would certainly keep it alive. There is none of that in reverse.
Right. I know one thing. We don't do it. We know she said it. We know she took off the next day, and we know she came back and apologized.
Sort of.
We all make. Oh, I didn't see it. But
she didn't apologize to Mike Pompeo, the guy she said it about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, Mike Pompeo is as smart and savvy as anybody. He's
Point graduate.
He's no one's sycophant.
Right.
Believe me, he's representing America with the world in a very positive way. But I know what you're saying. I hopefully, this is my hope, and I'll be idealistic. My hope is it starts at the top. We start showing decorum at the very top, from the president to the decorum that he showed with the Bushes, and the Bushes back to him. Mm-hmm. That gave us a clue. At the very top, if you start seeing a real effort made to compromise and treat people with a little bit more respect, it'll trickle down rapidly. But right now, it's a brawl. It is a bare-knuckle brawl.
It's rewarded in many ways, though, as well. Like the spectacle. MSNBC and CNN seem to be having a spectacle break fight, a dance fight, to see who can make the biggest clown of themselves. And there was a time, and I wrote about this too, there was a time in our lives when it was famous and infamous. Now there's no line between the two. There's no difference. It's just about getting attention. But a crazy person screaming in the middle of an intersection gets attention. It doesn't seem to matter anymore. But
Derek, I know you have a point, and I think most people agree with you.
As they should.
Right. But I think the person on the outside has very little respect for someone screaming in the middle of the road, even though they might be known, as opposed to someone like Daniel Krauthammer, who seems to have all the intellect and poise of his dad.
Yes.
So they're going to have equal fame at some point, right? Be known, but nobody ever wants to be that guy screaming in the middle of the road, as opposed to the deep thinker presenting his ideas and being open to others. So we're still able to judge just as much.
Sadly, though, Kim Kardashian is famous for a very specific reason. And she makes $50 million a year, and people aspire to be her. I just think that's dangerous, a dangerous road to go down, just from cultural perspective.
If I put Kim Kardashian next to Oprah, who do people aspire to be more?
Well, Oprah, yes, but if you put Kim Kardashian and Oprah in a room full of 13-year-old girls, which one do you think they've heard of?
Oh, I'm not trying to reform 13-year-old girls. I'm trying to talk about...
Just as a father of two girls, God help me, culture, please take this away. Yeah. Anyway, Brian Kilmeade, The Miracle of New Orleans, Andrew Jackson, The Miracle of New Orleans, is available in paperback with a bonus chapter, a bonus afterward. It's also out there in hardcover. We have a bunch of copies here. These hardcovers actually have book plates slid in them. They're not staped in there. So I'm going to ask you to sign them, because I want to mail out the book plates, too, to encourage 3 people to buy the book, then put the book plate in. I'm going to ask you to sign all of these, but more importantly, I'm going to ask you to draw, let's do 5 names from there.
Okay.
And read them out loud. The first 3 will be for hardcovers.
Stephen
Shik-Chow. Yeah, I don't know.
It's you?
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah,
I'll email you.
Bunch of C's.
Yes, exactly. Italian, I'm guessing.
Phil Way.
Phil Way, easy to pronounce, Phil. Good job. Nice work.
Joey Pesco.
These guys sound like they're from New York.
Yeah, I don't know what you mean by that.
I'm just saying.
No idea.
Got a sports book.
Yeah, Shoe.
Shoe, yes, Shoe. I got his name somewhere in my email.
Oh, okay.
He enters every week.
How many more do I need? Is that it?
No. Keep going. That's the 3 hardcovers. We've got 3 book plates and 3 soft
You really don't
covers.
like having books laying around.
No, I have over 1,000 copies of signed books for myself in my personal collection.
Oh, okay. Todd Cosgrove.
All right. These are for the soft cover, the paperbacks. One more of those.
Jane Kelly.
Jane?
You do have a female.
Oh no, we get women win a lot on here. I think our producer cheats.
Dave Peterson.
Dave Peterson gets a book plate, so Dave, you're going to have to buy a book.
A lot of Donald Trump statues here. Bob Baker.
Bob Baker, one more. All
right. Chris Cummings.
Chris Cummings, that's a solid American name. There's no Italian, there's no mafia in Chris Cummings.
Yeah, a lot of Americans are Italian. Derek, I hate to tell you. You can be Italian and an American.
I'm part Italian. You don't get this nose in nature.
Okay.
All right. Brian, I know you've got to go. You're headed over to the White House. The book, pick it up. It's an excellent read, a great history lesson about something you thought you knew about, but you didn't know the half of it.
And lastly, have I convinced you that sports phone is a broadcasting job?
No, but it's in the gray area.
Then I lied on my taxes. So
hello, IRS. You lied on it. It's past 7 years, so you're in the clear now.
Oh, that could.
Thank you for coming
Thanks,
in.
Derek.
I'll let it slide.
Congratulations on all of this.
Yeah, when you go for your next job, I won't call out and say, hey, he's padding his resume on his sports phone stuff back in the 80s.
Just scream at me on the subway. That'll be fine. I'm used to that.
I think it'll be